Thank you, Cobus.
Thank you, Becky. Appreciate that in the intro. So yes, with me on the, thank you everybody for joining us today. I just want to check, Becky, can everybody hear me and see my screen?
Yes, I can see it. We can hear you. I hope it's same for everyone.
And then also with me on the call today is Tato Mosakari. You would have probably seen him there in the audience. As we go through this presentation today, please, if you have any questions, do drop them in the chat. Tato will assist me as I go through this to answer as many of those questions as he can. And we will obviously pause for some Q&A at the end of this presentation as well. So yeah, so thank you very much for your time, Becky, and to the point. So AWS, I think everybody on this call knows about AWS. I think most people on this call are somewhere with regards to a cloud strategy. We call it a roadmap or pathway, if you like. Maybe you are today considering moving to the cloud. Maybe you already have some workloads in running in the cloud. You know, maybe today you just want to find out a little bit more about the cloud. So you know, today I hope we're going to address many of those issues, no matter where you are on your cloud journey. Just the interesting fact to note, you know, we've got AWS has got thousands of partners which they work through to service their customers. You know, the partner network, AWS partner network, is a massive landscape of highly skilled partners, you know, supporting from enterprise to small businesses, you know, with their journey to the cloud. Whether you are a born in the cloud type of organization from day one, whether you still run some legacy applications and you are thinking about moving those applications to the cloud, whatever your needs are, working with an AWS partner, you know, that is where we see our end customers get absolute value from AWS. You know, AWS has got 200 plus services, you know, and sometimes, you know, depending on what your starting point to the cloud is, you know, partners such as Procom, you know, deliver massive value to customers, you know, developing that journey, that cloud strategy, up to moving those workloads into the cloud, maintaining those workloads, so on and so forth. Today, we would like to go through a couple of things. So for those of you new to cloud, we're going to spend not a lot of time on it, but just quickly, high level, looking at what cloud computing is. We're going to briefly touch on the advantages of cloud computing and some types of it, and then some cloud computing deployment models, which I'm sure most of you on the call today will be familiar with. And then we're going to look at AWS cloud specifically. You know, what's AWS cloud? What's the value it brings to an organization? And, you know, what sets it apart? You know, why AWS cloud? What are those key differentiators? And then quickly touch base on AWS cloud economics. You know, obviously, you know, this, you know, depending on your strategy, you want to move to the cloud to save costs, you know, to improve agility, whatever the cloud strategy is or might be for you in the future. Managing it, you know, from a financial and a cost perspective is always critical for any workloads you shift to the cloud, you know, or for whatever services you want to leverage the cloud for. So briefly, what is cloud computing? Now, if you think about it, and like I said, most of you will be familiar with this, it is really the delivery, if you think about it, delivery of services over the internet. Yeah. That was how cloud was born, you know, way back. Right? So delivering those services, provisioning IT resources and applications. And then also a main component of cloud computing is that pay-as-you-go capability. Becky mentioned earlier, you know, how organizations and a lot of their customers are moving from a CAPEX operational model more to an OPEX model, a variable cost model. And that is really where cloud computing in general, you know, fits nicely into that space and into that strategy. So thinking about what cloud computing is, whether you are running your applications, for specific workloads, mobile users, mobile applications, even your critical workloads, you can rapidly access flexible and low-cost IT resources within the cloud. And that is not unique to AWS. That is a cloud thing, if you like. And you don't make any large upfront investments in hardware. Okay, so most of you will be familiar with that. I think one of the most compelling things about cloud computing is the fact that you remove the need to manage the hardware. Your network-connected hardware is all managed for you. And you can access as many resources as you need. But the point on that is it's instant. Okay, and that brings tremendous value to organizations, especially if you are looking at, maybe refactoring your applications, moving some of those applications and workloads to the cloud. To be able to scale quickly and instantly is what puts organizations ahead of the game today. And that's also one of probably the main reasons why organizations are looking at moving to the cloud. You only pay for what you use. That brings us back to that OPEX model. And there's simple ways to access your servers, your storage, your databases, and a broad range of application services. So very quickly, there's a lot more you can say about what cloud computing is, but those are the things that jumps out in terms of what cloud computing is. Who uses it? In AWS today, you've got some of the top 90% of the top 500 listed companies, in the US, North America using AWS, all the way to very small, medium businesses. So companies and organizations of all sizes are leveraging cloud, right, for the specific advantages that it brings to the business. Whether it's for data backups only, data backup and recovery, all the way to big data analytics and AI. Cloud has got a broad range of services for all types of businesses and organizations. And it's not just limited, and I think that's a wonderful thing about cloud. It's not limited to a specific enterprise or to a specific small business. It really addresses a wide variety of use cases within an organization. What are the specific advantages of cloud? Now, so there's 6 specific things. And again, this is cloud in general. 6 specific things or advantages that cloud brings to an organization. Obviously, I've mentioned already the capital expense that's changing to a variable expense model. The economies of scale. And I think that is something where the real value of cloud is being unpacked. If you think about it, you've got thousands, hundreds of thousands of users leveraging infrastructure in the cloud. By an organization or a business joining cloud or moving workloads to the cloud, you are actually benefiting from those massive economies of scale. Another important point for businesses today is when you're actually scaling or planning for infrastructure expansion or a refresh or renewal. Most of you will associate with this that, when you are sitting with your IT teams, you are planning your architectures moving forward, you're looking at your critical applications. Most of the times, I'm sure you will agree, the question that comes to mind and that jumps out is, are we actually provisioning enough capacity from a hardware perspective to deliver on our business outcomes? And a lot of times it's either underspec'd or, even worse, it's overspec'd. With cloud computing, you are removing that guesswork out of provisioning the correct resources to run your critical workloads or applications. That's a massive advantage of cloud computing in general. Obviously, you increase the speed and agility, so you can go to market faster. AWS works with one of the largest e-commerce operations in Africa. And one of the reasons they've chosen cloud computing, and in this case AWS specifically, is because of that point. They can take product and service to market much faster, leveraging all the services available in the cloud than they could, that they were, potentially could do in the past, on their legacy infrastructure. And if you think about business today, agility and speed to market could really be the breaking point between, success and failure, between growth and stagnation from a business perspective. So cloud really supports the business in terms of getting that increase in speed and agility. most of the Procom customers on the call today will probably have a data center of some sort. Some of you might have large data centers, some of you might have multiple. It goes without saying that with cloud computing, one of the main benefits is, there's zero cost data center management. And I want to put that into context. Sometimes we think about cloud and say, look, I've got 5 data centers spread across Africa, and maybe I've got, another data center sitting somewhere else. Moving all of these things, into the cloud, it's never simple. Okay. But even if you just decide, wherever you are on your journey, that we want to move one of our applications to the cloud. Okay. Now, just that one single application will already require underlying resources. By moving that application to the cloud, whether you do it all at once, whether you do it step by step, whatever the strategy or the cloud strategy might be, you start realizing immediate savings in terms of managing and maintaining the underlying infrastructure for those workloads or applications. And then the last one is obviously to scale and go global in minutes. So what's your business growth strategy? Are you maybe an organization today, scaling from Botswana further into Africa, maybe abroad? How quickly can you get your services or your products out on a global scale? Cloud is a massive enabler for that, because you can literally go and scale very, very quickly and go global with your business, literally in minutes. So 6 advantages that a lot of organizations today keep in mind when they talk about cloud, where they are developing their cloud strategy. So types of cloud computing, this everybody I'm sure on the call will be familiar with. So you've got obviously your infrastructure as a service, your platform as a service, and then your software as a service. So on the call today, we might have some organizations or businesses that's developing your own software solution that you want to take to customers. Running that software solution in the cloud brings us back to those 6 advantages on the previous slide. You can very quickly get that out to your customers at a global scale. From a platform perspective, all your underlying resources, most of the times pre-architected for specific workloads. Cloud brings that to you without you having the need to manage that platform, apply patches, monitoring the security. All of those things in a typical cloud environment is taken care of for you. And then infrastructure as a service, I think, is probably the one type of cloud computing we are most familiar with. So that is typically, your server, your storage, your compute resources in general. That is provisioned in the cloud. You take advantage of the economies of scale, and you actually deploy your workloads on those resources. Again, it's not a cost, it's not an upfront cost you have to carry, to invest in that infrastructure or to maintain that infrastructure. It's actually done for you. Then just lastly on what cloud is in general, before we go into AWS specifics, some deployment models. So, and again, most of you will today use some of these deployment models. Maybe you have got a roadmap or a strategy to move towards another deployment model. But thinking about cloud deployment models, your first one, cloud deployment model, is almost born in the cloud. Okay? So everything that you have, all your workloads, all your services are running in the cloud. Typically for larger organizations, the hybrid deployment model counts, where you have your own infrastructure for some of your workloads or applications, but you are moving some of the others to the cloud. Maybe you are using the cloud for backup and recovery purposes, big data analysis purposes, whatever. And at that point, it will become that hybrid deployment model. And then your on-premises deployment model, okay, where a lot of organizations actually got what we call today their private cloud. Okay, and they are also scaling out of that private cloud, various services and resources for their customers. So now that we kind of have a very quick high-level overview of what cloud is, what does cloud look on AWS, and what is the compelling story? Now, again, I think a lot of the audience here today will be familiar with AWS. So Now, AWS today, I mean, and it's growing every day, services are, millions and millions of active customers across 240 countries, okay, and territories across the globe. And as you might or might not know, AWS cloud infrastructure is built around regions and availability zones. And in Africa, in Cape Town, you've got a Cape Town region, Cape Town Africa region, with 3 availability zones, and it scales across the globe. And that is important when we start thinking about, I think the question was raised earlier in the other presentation about data sovereignty, data security, those types of conversations. And we'll come to that a little bit later on. So AWS Cloud operates in 80 availability zones within 25 geographical regions. Now, looking at where AWS is going in terms of their availability zones, they are actually at this point another region within Africa. And again, AWS will never share that roadmap information with anybody, not even with us. But there's obviously other services within the AWS stack that can be leveraged for data sovereignty and those type of things. And we call that edge services. And we can touch a little bit later on the edge services and the impact it could have for your business. So security. For AWS, everything starts and stops with security. For those of you who might already, be involved with AWS, maybe you're already running some workloads in AWS and you're thinking about, scaling the usage of AWS for your organization, you will most probably know, how important security is. From an AWS perspective, it allows organizations such as yourself to securely scale and grow, within a security posture that has been designed for customers. Now, you benefit from AWS security from the data center and network architecture that's actually been built to meet specific requirements around security. Security first, given your regions, your availability zones, and the data centers that you will leverage for your service, from scratch, it's designed from a security posture perspective first. AWS also, through having a massive footprint and presence across the globe, have phenomenal best practices that they implement within their architectures. And again, as a customer of AWS, whether you are on AWS or considering moving to AWS Cloud, you will immediately benefit from those inherited best practices. Now, AWS operates on a model called the shared responsibility model. And again, giving this webinar, I mean, that's a webinar on its own, how the shared responsibility model works. But basically, AWS takes care of security at the infrastructure layer, ensuring that the infrastructure is always available and secure. And then as a customer, when you are moving a workload onto AWS, you are taking responsibility to secure your workload. Now, to be clear on that, it's not like AWS is leaving you, to your own devices and saying, hey, I've given you the infrastructure, it's secure, now you go and make a plan. No. So AWS provides a myriad of tools, policies, and practices to help a customer ensure that whatever they're actually deploying on AWS in terms of the shared responsibility model is secure. And this is also a point where and why a lot of organizations, well, I would say in Africa, most organizations work with an AWS partner. Because AWS partners really understands, the security posture and requirements from a shared responsibility model. And working with a partner as an organization, you can rest assured that your workloads that's actually being deployed in AWS is as secure as it can be. Like I said, AWS provides tools, guidance, and expertise on security. From the moment you start, doesn't matter the size of the workload, there's very constructive guidance and advice on how to make sure that your actual workloads are secure. That comes with the tools and features. And then AWS is continuously auditing and being audited from a security perspective. That is not just from a regional perspective, it's from an availability zone perspective, all the way down to a people perspective. It is very, very secure environments, but being continuously audited, to adhere to best practices. And these are done by both external parties and internally by AWS itself. So what are the benefits, and why is AWS putting security first, and how does it actually contribute to you as a potential customer, and what are those benefits that it brings to you? So I think the first thing, as was mentioned in the call earlier through a question, keeping data safe. So I think, I've already mentioned through the way that the data centers and availability zones in the regions has been structured, it's all with data security in mind. But it also assists customers to very quickly meet compliance requirements. And the reason for that is, depending on what sector your business is in and what vertical you operate in, enterprises and even small and medium businesses today have to comply with a myriad of regulations. AWS has the tools and the resources to assist customers today navigating those, making sure that what you've deployed in the cloud, in AWS cloud, adheres to or is compliant, to whatever rules and regulations for your region applies. Now, again, talking about the shared responsibility model here, it is very important, to work with a partner that can work with you to decide, what the best options are for you in terms of data sovereignty, for example. You might be sitting in a region in East Africa today saying, look, my data can't leave the country, right? I can't go and host my workloads in Cape Town. What are the options? And the good news about that, there are options. As I mentioned before, through the Edge Services platform that AWS has available for customers, there's always a solution to ensure that you as a customer can continue to reap the benefit of AWS cloud, but also meet compliance requirements. And this is, again, and I can't overemphasize this, where partner becomes so important. A lot of customers, and we've seen it, a lot of customers embark on a cloud journey. They look at cloud in general, they look at their own workloads, their business, their strategy, and then they start actually, thinking about it. They shoot cloud down sometimes very quickly because of a reason like data sovereignty, not knowing what the options are. And once you actually start working with a partner such as Procom, and we shed some light on those challenges, you will most of the time find that there are still some very cost-efficient ways to still meet your business requirements, while also meeting your compliance requirements. And there's a lot more to that I can cover in this webinar. But the platform of services is available there to address many a use case around that specific requirement. Then obviously saving money. If you think about it, and again, this probably forms a large part of your cloud focus today. Or it's stuff that you are thinking about as you are, embarking on your cloud journey, wherever you are. To secure your own infrastructure, those of you who have your own data centers, it all incurs cost. Moving to AWS cloud, with the secure architecture and posture that AWS has put in place for customers, you don't carry that cost. So there's definite savings there in terms of how you handle security, what you actually save through the shared responsibility model, with AWS carrying a large part of that. And as I said before, one of the general advantages to cloud, but specifically AWS, is how you can very quickly scale. So for example, if you are running an application in the cloud today, your customer base is growing, maybe you're running an RDS database or a database workload in AWS, and you need to provision more resources, you can do that instantly. A lot of organizations today, especially where we get a scenario where infrastructure has been underspec, for example, to scale, you need to invest and make an upfront purchase, a capital expense to provision a new server. A lot of IT teams, specifically in DevOps, You know, they maybe, you know, some of you on the call today have your own DevOps. You know, they're working on your applications every day. They release a new feature. They need to test that feature. Now, to provision the resources for your dev team to thoroughly test the new features which they want to take to customers, you know, you need to provision that resources for them. And in a lot of organizations, that takes time. You know, depending what the protocols are, you know, in some cases, you know, you need to negotiate with the infrastructure team. Say, look, you know, can I have some compute available, maybe some storage? And these things, you know, in complex organizations takes time, and you lose time to market. In AWS, you can spin up those test environments, you know, with a click of a button, and you can also monitor that, and you can also close it down very quickly. Not that you continue to incur costs. So scalability for any business is very relevant today, and AWS clouds bring you those benefits. Look, we all see security standards everywhere. You know, from an AWS perspective, you know, there are robust controls in place, as I've mentioned before. And again, we have a very comprehensive deck and resources from AWS, specifically just talking around security. And, you know, the invitation, I know Procom knows it's open. You know, if any of the attendees on the webinar today, you know, are stuck somewhere in the cloud strategy around security, I want to invite you to please, you know, reach out to Procom. Let's do a special session, you know, specifically around security. Let's address the concerns. Let's present the options, because they are there. You know, don't put a stop on your cloud journey, you know, and don't delay your cloud strategy because of some misconceptions which there might be around compliance and security. Reach out to your trusted partner, Procom. We will work closely. We work closely with them, and we can unpack those specific concerns. So what sets AWS apart? So obviously, you know, from a hyperscaler perspective, there's options out there. And how does AWS feature, you know, and what in the world of AWS, you know, is those special things that sets us apart, you know, from other hyperscalers or other cloud solutions out there. I've mentioned it before. So AWS, a multitude of services, over 200 plus services being developed every day, being, you know, new services being spun up every month. You know, AWS is innovating at a pace that, you know, some say the market can't keep up with. And, you know, at the end of the day, it benefits AWS customers. If you think about, you know, AWS today, it is, you know, without a doubt, the most comprehensive adopted cloud platform around. And it's got millions of customers. I mean, I'm sure, you know, some of the attendees on this webinar today, some of your organizations and businesses are already leveraging AWS somewhere for something. And sometimes you might not even know it. I mean, there's an old saying in the world that AWS is Microsoft's biggest customer. You know, you might be using some SaaS solutions today, highly likely, and those SaaS solutions are running on AWS already. You might have your own SaaS solution, you know, which you are thinking of running out of the cloud. AWS is there for you. There's different solutions, different services, depending on no organization is the same, but there is a value to all organizations out there. Doesn't matter how big or small. Just one thing in terms of startups as well. So AWS has hundreds of programs. And with these programs, they support customers to start their journey on the cloud or in the cloud, in AWS cloud, or for example, to move specific workloads into AWS. And again, you know, we as an AWS distributor work very closely with all our partners. We've got hundreds of partners across Africa who we work with. And we are bringing those programs to them. We are unpacking those programs. And the point of that is because those programs brings value to the customers. So, again, open invitation, Procom, with the customer base. We can unpack these programs one at a time. They are relevant to specific workloads. So, for example, if your organization today are thinking about modernizing SAP, for example, you want to move that onto AWS, there's specific programs around that, incentives, credits, all sorts of incentives to help customers today leveraging the benefit of AWS Cloud. Maybe there's Microsoft workloads you want to run on AWS. Maybe there's Oracle you want to run on AWS. Whatever the use case is, organizations today are leveraging AWS to move a lot of the common workloads, but also more complex workloads onto AWS. Why? To reap the benefits, become more agile, lower cost, and innovate faster. And they are reaping those benefits every day. Just some key cloud service provider differentiators from an AWS perspective. I've mentioned security. And again, any security concerns, let's discuss it. Let's unpack security in a session with Procom and really unpack any concerns. We can do that. But the service breadth and depth, 200 plus services, I've mentioned that before, to support any cloud workload. The pace of innovation, I've mentioned that before. AWS is innovating at a scary pace. The experience, building and managing cloud since 2006. They've got over millions of customers, over the world. Global footprint, machine learning. It is phenomenal, the services around machine learning and artificial intelligence that runs in AWS. If you think about, IBM, you think about IBM Cloud Pak, the quick starts architectures. You can literally spin up, advanced analytics platforms on AWS using a quick start reference architecture. There's solutions like SMB Cloud Builder. You can actually go and provision services, in less than 10 minutes, right? And these things are available to your partner. Your partner manages that for you. Obviously, with some more complex workloads, there's support. There's always support for if you want to move massive databases, if you want to refactor an application. AWS is a cloud leader, and I will come to that in the next slide. So, a lot of talking I've done so far, but really, it is all true. From a Gartner perspective, for cloud infrastructure platform services, AWS is by far the leader again for 2021. So it's acknowledged. Like I said, and I want to pause here. Organizations, and that, businesses don't, move to the cloud for the sake of moving to the cloud. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, you've never invested in infrastructure purely because Gartner thinks they are great. Every business and every organization's cloud journey is unique. And I think that from our perspective and what we see with our partners and their customers, that is the most important part. Where will your business find value in AWS Cloud? What do you do to get to that value? And what is available to scale from that point? And again, and I will say this again, this is where your partner becomes a critical stakeholder for your cloud strategy. Understanding where you are, where you want to go. Very little businesses and enterprises today, if any, moves everything to the cloud in one shot. Most of the times it's not advised. But what are those specific resources that you can leverage of AWS Cloud? What are those specific applications you can start moving to the cloud? And what will the benefits be to your business? Again, partners like Procom, they understand this landscape, they understand the cloud journey, they understand cloud strategy. And working closely with them will get your cloud journey kicked off. So AWS has significantly more services and features than any other cloud provider. And again, that is also why, it features at the top of Gartner's quadrant. And the reason for that is because of the innovation. If you think about infrastructure technologies, compute, storage, databases, machine learning, AI, data lakes, IoT, if you think about serverless compute, these are all extremely innovative ideas, and some of you might already use serverless compute. But from a DevOps perspective, from running your application, there's various options available in terms of what's going to be the most cost-effective for your workload, for your goal, your objective, and how can you scale from there? AWS has, very deep functionality within the 200 plus services they make available to customers today. And if you just think about databases, you would have probably seen it in the media. Maybe you've played with RDS. Maybe you've moved the database onto AWS already. But they have the widest variety of databases, purposely built for specific use cases and business outcomes. And again, if you are a customer today, at that point in your cloud journey, your cloud strategy, where you are thinking about your database, the future of your database, moving your database to the cloud, please reach out to Procom. Let's unpack your database requirements. Let's look at what you have, where you want to go, how you want to scale into the future, and how you can, and what type of benefits you can actually get from AWS Cloud. AWS has the largest community of customers and partners, and I think this is probably one of the most wonderful things about AWS. Working with your partner, you immediately start working with a community of millions of active users and customers. And it's across every industry. Like I said, from 90% of the top 500 Fortune companies, even in South Africa, and the JSE listed companies, and stock exchanges across Africa. Like I said, most of them leverage AWS, for specific workloads, for specific applications. Most of them got about 80% of their infrastructure running in AWS, or applications running on AWS infrastructure. And then the partner network. And this is actually something that a lot of customers aren't aware of, is that AWS has got thousands of SAs and MSPs out there working with customers every single day. And funny enough, those are the customers that's reaping most benefit out of AWS. And I'm going to give you an example. As a customer today, you can go and create an AWS account, by a snap of the finger. It's really quick. You can start spinning up workloads, pay for your credit card, all that stuff. I think many of you have probably played around with it in that way. Unfortunately, a lot of businesses have done the same thing. But the challenge comes in terms of, are you actually provisioning the right infrastructure for your business goal and your application, for example? And how do you manage the cost? And unfortunately, cloud in general sometimes gets a bad name when it comes to cost, because there is no knowledge, understanding, and skill in terms of cost management. And I'm going to touch base on that a little bit later on in the presentation. How do you innovate on AWS Cloud? And that is where your partner plays a critical role. Why? And I think Becky mentioned it in his introduction. Why are people moving to managed services? Why is organizations considering that? Skill. Your partner, your AWS partner, is the entity that's investing in that skill. They work with organizations such as ourselves as a distribution partner on training, capability development programs, incentives for their customers. And that is how you start to really, truly reap the benefits of AWS Cloud. And those organizations that do run very, very successfully on AWS. So again, a big consideration in terms of how you develop your cloud strategy. I've mentioned security, and you will see security probably popping up everywhere in this deck, but it is because security sits at the heart of everything that AWS do. If you've already, got some workloads running in AWS, you will most likely know what I'm talking about. And if you are considering AWS, I think we should talk more about that if you've got concerns. But the security posture of an AWS is second to none. If you just think about the financial services institutions running on AWS globally, government institutions globally, it is from a security perspective really to the highest standard. And I don't want to spend too much time again on this. I think I hope I got the message across in terms of security. And I want to mention this again, the fast pace of innovation. And I want to mention serverless compute here specifically. Because I think if you've got the development house in-house today, your developers can actually go and run their code without provisioning or managing any servers whatsoever. And AWS is keep on innovating in that space. Serverless compute, I mean, it's mind-boggling. But it's there, the service is there. Imagine the value this will bring to your DevOps teams. And again, looking at SageMaker, machine learning, it's a fully managed machine learning platform available to customers today. How do you build in big data, if you're in the big data analytics game, the value it brings to your business? How do you process that data? How do you analyze that data? You might actually be using a third-party tool. Highly likely, right, that third-party tool already has reference architecture in AWS for infrastructure layer. And again, your partner knows all of these services that can fit into your strategy, that can support your business, that can actually drive your business outcomes on AWS. These are just to mention a few. Like I said, there's over 200 plus services and tools in AWS. And AWS today, it is well recognized. It's a well recognized brand. It's acknowledged. It's got a proven operational track record in terms of expertise. I mean, I don't have to say that the millions of customers thing again, but I think the scale of AWS, and in terms of how that scale actually supports customers. So, for example, you can have workloads running today here in Africa. You can have workloads running in Singapore. You can have workloads running between here, Singapore, and the US. The scale is phenomenal, and they are continuing to invest in that. So, I think I want to pause here before I go into some other key differentiators. I have done a lot of talking. It's 44 minutes past 11. Maybe just a pit stop. Tato, I can't see my chat panel. Has there been any questions so far?
Nothing on my side, Cobus. I'm not seeing any questions.
Maybe pausing for Becky, some input at this point before I tackle the last bits. And then we can go into Q&A.
Hi, Cobus.
Hi.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make a comment about some of the issues that you have touched on. So obviously, when customers or when we talk to customers about the cloud, what it can offer, often as a starting point, a customer would want to know what is the compelling reason for them to move to the cloud. Is the cloud a right fit for their organization? So some of the things that a customer, if they have such doubts about whether they need to move to the cloud, one of the things that they need to think about is the services that they offer. If they are running their services on premise, are they able to offer the reliability that the end users within the organizations are expecting of that service, and how easy is it to scale that service? So you'd find that with on-premises infrastructure, scalability really is an issue because you are almost always looking at CapEx expenditure for you to even try and meet some of your scalability requirements. But that is not a concern when you move to the cloud. So if you think about your service, remember when we talk more about digital transformation, you are essentially saying you are offering services as the business. So your business is less what it is as we know it now as a brick and mortar with manual processes, but you are transforming that organization to offer its services in an electronic format. as an online service. So as we think about digital transformation, you are obviously worried about reliability, you are obviously worried about security. So as a customer, if you are grappling with the question as to is the cloud a right solution for your business, then that should be compelling enough for you to move. The other issue obviously is cost. We have talked about the cloud as being quite cost effective in terms of it being an OPEX expenditure compared to CAPEX, which also dovetails into the issue of scalability I spoke about. So one need to ask themselves the question as to whether they are satisfied with the costs of what they are running on premise. So just to keep the lights on in the data center on premise, are you happy with those costs? And if you were to scale, because we know that traffic fluctuates at different times of the month. So if you were to scale, what kind of costs are associated with scaling up on-prem? And vis-a-vis if you were on the cloud and you needed to scale immediately for a couple of days or a couple of hours and scale right back. So cost of running on-prem, obviously, it's now prohibitive, and businesses need not to be spending a lot of money on infrastructure or on IT, really, because that's not the core business. IT is an enabler. And as we move towards digital transformation, IT becomes sort of the skeleton that holds everything together as you offer online services. So I just wanted to make that comment that customers really need to think about the service that they're offering, the cost of running applications on-prem. The ease of migration as well is another thing they need to think about if they are wondering whether the cloud is something that they need to adopt now. Over to you, Cobus. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's spot on, and I think those are the main considerations, for any organization that's developing their strategy, thinking about moving to the cloud. And to your point, there's a lot around cost. I think that organizations need to keep in mind, which most of them or some of them not always do. And we will come to that in terms of how you can actually do that. But spot on. Thanks for that input. I just want to jump into this really. So and this is really to Effort's point as well, in terms of cloud value. So AWS has gone and developed what they call today the cloud value framework. And this is part of those tools that I've mentioned earlier on. As you start considering your journey to AWS, potentially, and you start working with Procom, your partner, these are the type of tools that comes into play. And one of those is this AWS Cloud Value Framework. And there's a couple of things when it comes to cost, or in terms of savings moving to the cloud. And this has been developed by AWS through looking at thousands of use cases over the years, through enterprises all the way through to small, medium business customers on AWS. And they've defined this value framework around 4 pillars, if you like. So the first one, from a cloud value perspective, is cost savings. The second one talks to staff productivity. Then you've got your operational resilience and your business agility. And if you think about, you're somewhere in your cloud journey, and to the point, what is the value? Talking around those or planning around those 4 pillars is what's going to actually give you a lot more clarity in terms of what value you can derive out of it. So what is the cost savings, the TCO? And that is that first point, that was raised just now, is the infrastructure cost savings and the avoidance from moving, to the cloud. So if you compare your infrastructure cost savings, to the avoidance, from moving to the cloud, and there's an example at the bottom that, from this cloud value framework research that AWS has done, there's a 50% plus reduction in TCO. Okay, and that was specifically just General Electric that they did that on. But if you move to the staff productivity one, and this is now where it gets interesting from a cloud value perspective. What is it? So that's the efficiency improvement by function on a task-by-task basis. So in other words, your staff is using an application. They are using it, to maybe send a file, receive a file, edit a file, answer a query, whatever the case might be. And if you look at that specific productivity point, within cloud, there's an example of what the finding was, from Sage perspective, that they were saving over 500 hours per year of server configuration time. And again, this whole cloud value framework can be unpacked in detail, when you're actually having these conversations with your partner. And then the operational resilience, again, the benefit of improving your service level agreements and reducing unplanned outages. I'm sure that some of you have incurred an unplanned outage at some point in time. And the disruption it causes, sometimes, the brand, the damage it does to your brand, your service, what's the benefits of the cloud in terms of mitigating those outages? And Expedia, for example, has got critical workloads that they run in multiple availability zones and regions for their robust disaster recovery. Now, just to bring that back into the picture, if you just take, for example, the Cape Town, Africa region as a region, there's 3 availability zones in there. If availability zone 1 goes down, your workload's immediately running from availability zone 2. Availability zone 2 goes down, it immediately runs from availability zone 3. If 1 and 2 goes down, it runs from 3. If 3 and 2 goes 1, it runs from 1. And these are practical examples happening today. I mean, those are some of the reasons why a lot of enterprises in the financial services sector, but across verticals, are moving to AWS cloud. And if you think about from a cloud value perspective, the 4th pillar to consider is the business agility aspect of it. How quickly can you deploy new features in your applications, and reduce the errors that often comes along with that? And you can see Unilever, for example, has launched new products, 75% faster. I mean, there's loads of use cases, by the way, around that specific business agility pillar, if you like. And maybe some of the customers today, on this call, some of the organizations already actually leverage those advantages in AWS. But you've got a typical focus which sits around infrastructure. But then you've got some of the most compelling cloud benefits sitting in staff productivity, operational resilience, and business agility. And those are the things that expands the conversation around cloud journey, where you are, where you're going. Because sometimes just making a like-for-like infrastructure cost comparison, it is truly valid. But looking at those most compelling cloud benefits, which is the people, your staff, your operations, and your applications, then the value starts actually forming a holistic picture in terms of, planning to move to the cloud. So this was just the IDC research piece that was done a while back around, optimizing cost of providing services, and the AWS value. And again, this was done over 1,000 end customers, okay, over a period of time, and it's an independent report. I don't usually like showing these things because I know you guys probably see a lot of them from a lot of vendors, but it is an interesting picture. And this is what customers are saying, moving into AWS, this is typically what they see. Is if you think about, the efficiency in terms of your IT infrastructure staff, right? So think about this. If you've got 2 data centers today, maybe 1 data center, maybe you've got multiple data centers. The team that needs to manage those from a day-to-day basis, make sure it's secure, make sure it's up and running, you do the patching, whatever the case might be. If you move infrastructure, or if you start leveraging infrastructure in AWS, right, and you've got some sort of a managed service from a partner supporting you, where will those energy of those skilled individuals go? They can start looking at your applications, they can start looking at your actual customers, your business goals, and start adding value there. And if you think about it, and there it is, that's the research, it was a 51%, for a lowering in 5-year cost of operations, 6-month payback. If you go at improved business agility, more new features delivered 3 times, 25% more productive application development teams. And this, from a DevOps perspective, is really true. And I get it a lot from our partners working with customers who specifically focused on DevOps. Having that ability and tools and services in AWS to develop your application, to refactor your application, to modernize your application, to run in the cloud, And all the services, the support services and capabilities that AWS offers for the DevOps team derives massive, massive value in terms of their productivity. And then the last one is just from a business ops perspective, in terms of on-plan downtime. That across AWS is actually a phenomenal story, not just through this IDC piece. Talking to enterprises, mitigating risk because of the way that the regions and the AZs, the availability zones, is made available to customers. Just a little bit of interesting piece. Now, cost. So, and this brings me back to the point that I've made before. Working with a partner, is so useful because your partner focuses relentlessly on AWS, new innovation, new tools, new services, and they bring that to you as a customer, and they understand it, in depth. And then one of these things is, for example, cost management services. A lot of organizations jump into cloud, right? For some, fortunately, for others, unfortunately so. And bad experiences sometimes comes with lack of knowledge, lack of expertise, lack of skill. And the whole idea of working with a partner with your AWS services is because they make that investment in that. But if you think about use cases, capabilities, and AWS resources, what you're seeing on that screen, that is just cost management services that AWS makes available to customers. And by using these tools, right, by leveraging these tools, and I have to say, most organizations, they cover various services across the board. You don't have to use all of them, at once. But these tools are there specifically. Very insightful, very capable tools to manage cost, control cost, monitoring cost, do budgetary planning. All this is available to your CFO, CIO, to work together to see, maybe you are planning 2 years in advance. To what extent will my cost on AWS, grow? Savings plans, leveraging things called reserved instances. How do you actually combine all these incentives, and free services a lot of the times to drive down your cost, keep it down, but also budget for the future? And these tools are all available there. This is where your AWS partner adds so much tremendous value, to your cloud journey. And there's a lot of organizations that's not using these. They're aware of them, but they're not really using them. And I think that is the key. There are plenty before that's really using them. But I think it's important that you know cost management is such an important part of AWS Cloud. The last thing I want to touch on, and I just want to idle down a little bit at this point. You might be sitting on the call today thinking, okay, all right, we've talked about cloud, a lot of times internally in our strat sessions at executive level. We understand cloud. We've got a fairly good concept around what cloud is. We understand cloud models. We understand how cloud could support our business, our goals, and our future. We understand, that we're leveraging partners already for a lot of our services, and why should cloud be any different? But you are still stuck in terms of moving your cloud strategy to the next stage. It could be because your chief security officer, your CSO said, whoa, we got to look at compliance, guys. We got to look at data management. We got to look at data security, sovereignty. You might have reached a point where you are stalling, moving your cloud journey forward because of cost considerations. Maybe the CFO said, let's stop there, guys. I've heard stories about cloud costs spinning out of control. Wherever you are on your cloud journey and whatever brake you've put on it because of whatever reason, it's a good time to reach out to Procom. Let's talk about those needs and requirements. Let's talk about those concerns. Let's unpack them, and let's see what AWS Cloud offers to overcome those challenges. One thing that AWS partners have access to through us is what we call well-architected reviews. If you are on the webinar today and you're already running some sort of a workload in the cloud, maybe you're testing something, reach out to Procom. Let's do an architected review for you on that workload. And what this aims to do, and all customers from enterprise, large corporates, globals, to small, medium businesses, leverages these well-architected reviews to ensure a couple of things. Number one, operational excellence. We measure your workload against operational excellence. We're measuring it against security. We're measuring it against reliability, performance, and cost. And then we make recommendations. And by leveraging Procom to work with you on these well-architected reviews, and I'm sorry, I'm running out of time, you can actually ensure that whatever you're running on the cloud is adhering to AWS best practices. And with that, sorry for the rush at the end. I'm pausing. Sorry, Becky, I've run over by 3 minutes, but that is my last slide.
Thank you so much, Cobus. I believe this is a start of a conversation that we're going to have with our clients. So we're going to do a follow-up session where we take a deep dive into AWS and show you the services that AWS offers and how you can take advantage of these services in your strategy,